Hey guys, subscribe for daily content. And if you're shopping for gear, make sure you check out the description for the newest items at some of the very best online retailers. There's also links for some of the items that I personally recommend. Thanks!
What's going on YouTube? Metal Complex here, and today I've got a short little knife review slash knife overview to share with you guys. This is the AMEight Kermu. I believe that's how they want us to pronounce the name there. It's very similar, I guess, to the Marrow, like in terms of the blade shape, but the difference is instead of the opening mechanism being carved into the blade and it being a front flipper, it's just a regular flipper. So I guess, you know, a lot of these Migron slash AMEight knives are very similar to each other and they have slight alterations. This is the one that I felt like was most similar to the Marrow, right? And I know that a lot of people in that review actually said it would have been great if it was just a regular flipper. This might be the answer. There's a couple of different configurations, including like a copper carbon fiber. This sort of Arctic fat carbon, that's what I'm gonna call it, is also very, very cool. I will link it right down in the description. It does help my channel when you use those links, but that's entirely up to you. Thanks to my patrons for supporting me, and please make sure to follow me on Instagram at metal_complex. And thanks to Migron slash AMEight for providing this knife for review. Let's go ahead and measure it. Overall length of the Kermu. God, I hope that that's how I'm supposed to pronounce it. 7.85 inches, blade length 3.5, cutting edge about 3.25. How about some size comparisons? Any custom skills you find in this section can be found down in the description under Original Goat and others. It's what I'd call just shy of a full-size knife. It feels very full-size, obviously smaller in profile and length than the AD10, a bit bigger than something like the AD20.5. Let's put it up against the Spyderco PM2 and the Spyderco Para 3. Very, very close to the overall length of the Spyderco PM2 with, I think this is worth pointing out, quite a bit more cutting edge, right? Despite being substantially shorter in terms of handle length, and also quite a bit bigger than the Spyderco Para 3. And then finally, let's put it up against the Benchmade Griptilian, or in this case, the Ritter Hogue and the Hogue Deca. Alrighty, there you go. How's the action on this knife? This knife runs on bearings, is a titanium frame lock, and a flipper. It does not have double clutch. It has smooth but tight initial action. It's not really tight. It's just the type of action that you know when it breaks in, which it inevitably will be very, very smooth. And this is fine. It's very consistent. The pivot doesn't feel gritty. It feels nice, right? The detent break feels crisp. The actual detent snap in the close position feels very good, right? It's exactly what you'd expect from Migron. The flipper tab works exactly right, or exactly the way that you would expect it to work. You have a good amount of access to that lock bar. It's peaking just slightly above the show side scale. Sorry, I've got lunch in my teeth. That's gross random information. If you wanted to know, my lunch is still in my teeth, apparently. I'll try not to spit it over the knife that I'm reviewing. Access to the lock bar is very good. You can see it's peeking over the show side scale there, which is great. No double clutch. Very easy to disengage with one hand. I have no problem with the action whatsoever. I think the flipper tab is also great. Jimbing's in the right place. It's not too sharp. It's not too pokey. You can absolutely push button it, and you can also light switch it, whatever you like. Let's go ahead and do carry profile. Thickness up against the Spyderco Para 3. You can see here, it's pretty darn similar. But this guy is slightly contoured, which is absolutely a bonus in my opinion. Length and height up against the PM2 and Para 3. This guy is just going to be an easier knife to pocket. It's honestly just slightly larger than the PM2 folded up. Nowhere near as tall this way. Way smaller than the, it's about the same overall length as the Para 3. It's way smaller than the PM2, despite having quite a bit more cutting edge. Again, you can see right there. Okay. Let's go ahead and do a hardware check. I'm going to get out my tools. As per usual, my tools are very inexpensive and very recommendable. You can find them right down in the section of my description that talks about the tools I use on this channel, or the pinned comment. T8 is most likely what we're looking at here. Yep. And then we have, it's a T6 lock bar insert screw, but a T8 body screw. And there's just two here on each side. Well, actually, one of them is going to be one of the screws for the pocket clip. There are two screws for the pocket clip. Both of them are T8. That's fine. Very minimal hardware. As long as you have the right tools for the job, you should be good to go. Let's go ahead and measure the blade stock thickness here real quick. Blade stock thickness, I'm going to guess that's 120. That's what they usually do, right? It's 123. It's probably actually 125. 125 thousandths. Materials. We have, honestly, really cool Arctic, what I'm assuming is fat carbon here, carbon fiber. They also have the copper laced fat carbon as an option. They both look great. Titanium, M390, not M390. Don't know what I'm saying. I'm transforming into a British person. The M390 is, according to their website, hardened to 59 to 61, which is the industry standard. Of course, I would like to see it consistently 60 or higher, but okay. 59, 61 is where they're hitting it, which is better than they have hit it in the past, so that's fine. And then titanium for the clip, titanium for the backspacer, and we do have we have no internal milling on the inside, and that's probably because they had to make room for the pockets required for the fat carbon. 4.06 ounces for 3.5 inches of blade, not bad. The balance point is, it's about the lower half of this primary choil area, back from the pivot a bit, but it doesn't feel like a super heavy knife. Certainly will be heavier than something like the Para 3 or especially the Bug Out, but as far as a full titanium knife that's almost 8 inches, right around 4 ounces is a lot of people's comfort zone. That's fine for me, right? But you can do whatever you want with that information. Are we good to go? Is that everything? Yeah, I think let's go ahead and progress here. So this is a knife profile that has been done many times. This is one of those knives where the knee-jerk reaction is to say, that's a copy of it, and then insert like one of literally thousands of designs, right? This isn't a copy of anything because no company owns this handle profile and no company owns this blade profile. Any knife that you can think of, I can give you a list of 10,000 other knives that look the same, right? And are probably older than the design that is mentioned. This is a classic typical blade profile and a classic typical handle profile. So it's going to resemble a lot of different stuff, right? But I don't think they really tried to go unique with the profile of a knife. They went really classic, and they did their usual Migron/AMEight treatment to it, meaning we got the really cool diamond textured titanium, which I'm so happy to see is a regular thing with a lot of companies. My ego tells me that I had a lot to do with that. I know I'm not. Years ago, I kept saying, why don't we see this texturing more often? It's so good, right? And I kept saying, and then communicating with companies both through these reviews and through private, messages on Instagram. I would always say, hey, listen, can you do this? Can you do this? And eventually, companies like Migron and Kunwu and a bunch of other companies were like, yeah, we totally can. We can do it on flat or contoured surface, and we started to see this more often. So, credit to the companies for making it. I'm going to take a little bit of the credit for pushing for it. I know that a lot of you guys have enjoyed this texturing. It's nice to look at. It feels good, right? But if you don't want to give me credit, that's also perfectly fine. You can say, no, shut up, Complex. That ain't you. But anyways, I know that it existed before I talked about it. I'm not saying that I invented it. I'm just saying I pushed for it over the last few years. And we see it more often now, which is great. I love the look of it. I love the consistency of it. I think it looks great. Nice chamfering. The transition from titanium to carbon fiber is very good. It's very clean. And look at that. They did it on both sides. Credit where it's due. I know that bothers you guys when we do texturing on one side and not the other, or an inlay on one side and not the other. They did texturing and the inlay on both. That's pretty cool. I like that. They did a great job with it too. The ergonomics are exactly what you'd expect. They're comfortable, and that's number one, due to the size and shape of the pocket clip, which ends right at the 50% line, which is fine. Mainly, the reason that it's not bothersome is because it's milled and spoon-shaped at the end. So you can, gain the benefit of the really traditional knife handle, but it's contoured, chamfered down. It's comfortable. There's basically one position to hold this knife in, not counting the choke up position, which is just single knuckle because it's just not quite enough room to really get you. A lot of times I say if the flipper tab wasn't here, you could make use of that. I think in this case, we have so many knives from Migron and AMEight, which are the same. Obviously, having a version of this general profile with a flipper tab is a good idea, but if you're going to do that, Migron/AMEight, and you're still going to put a choil in here, make it bigger. This is simply not big enough for, I don't know, I'm going to say the average index finger is just not going to fit in there, right? That's ending at, that's like 60% of my index finger, right? And my index finger is not that big. It might be a little bit bigger than the average index finger. Maybe not. Maybe it's the same. Maybe it's the average index finger. That's not big enough. Make it bigger. Or don't do it at all. Make this a simple sharpening choil and make it to where nobody's ever going to put their finger up there, right? Don't go halfway. Don't give us a half choil. Give us the whole thing, or don't give us any. But it's nice that we have this profile with a flipper tab. This is a compound grind. We have a hollow ground primary edge, and it's very thin up front. And then we have a flat secondary edge. Interesting, there's a subtle angle change right there. It just goes derp down. But okay, it looks good, and we've seen this grind a million times before. It looks good, it functions well, right? It's a continuous curvature, so you don't have to change angles or sharpening, or change, I guess, direction. You don't have to like alter the clamps or anything like that. But it'll work. You can just continuously sharpen like this over time, and you have a stronger tip, right? If you lightly abuse your pocket knives, I guess. Do what you want, it's your money, right? But don't use your pocket knife as a screwdriver. But if you do weird stuff like that every now and then, a grind like this will emphasize the slicing performance while maintaining tip strength at the same time. I always wish that they would do more of their hand rub satin finish, or I wish they would do tumbled finish more often, right? They do a belt satin, and their belt satin looks really, really good. I just wish that we'd have some different options. But the finish that they've applied to this is fine. It's okay. Sorry, my kids are upstairs screaming. Still spring break. There's going to be you guys are going to hear my kids screaming in roughly 14 uploads, because that's how many videos I record in a 5-day period. And since spring break is 5 days of the week, because I don't record on the weekend, you will hear their voices quite a bit. So it's hard for me to tell them, like, hey, you can't have any fun while I'm making my videos. No, like you're going to hear them in the background sometimes. Sorry. M390, like I said, there's nothing on the blade except for M390, and no, that's it. And then you see the AMEight logo over here. Jimping, I think, comes out to a useful spot, and I'm glad that they made it deep enough that it's actually functional. You can absolutely use this, right? So like I said, their M390 is hardened to 59 to 61. Personally, I would prefer M390 on a working geometry, and meaning a knife that is actually meant to be used and not one that is like hilariously oversized, which Migron does make. They make the Arma and soon the Geddon, which are massively oversized. But on a knife with working geometry, I would prefer M390 to be 60 to probably 62. That's where I like it, but that's just my opinion. 59 I think is a little bit too soft, but that seems to be the industry standard, so at least they're hitting that, right? Outside of that, there's really nothing extremely special going on. This is very typical Migron back here. Flat backspacer, no lanyard hole. We have a pocket clip that's mounted for right-handed tip-up only. Sorry, lefties. Migron, you really should be paying attention to the lefty crowd, because that's 10% of your potential knife buying audience. I love that how they did the inlay here. It's smooth, and because it's not on the texturing, that means the pocket clip rides right on that inlay, and you definitely notice it coming in and out of the pocket. So that's really cool, and that's great that they put it on that side. So very good. I also really like the way they do this sculpted clip. It's not flat. It kind of goes up, and it makes it a little easier to get in and out of the pocket. I wish it was slightly shorter, but I don't want to complain too much. I honestly think it's a really good clip. Steel lock bar insert that doubles as the over travel stop, so that's excellent. We have a stop pin located in its traditional position, a little bit of shouldering. Excellent lockout sound, excellent closed position sound, very clicky, no blade play up, down, left, or right. Migron and AMEight can do a good frame lock, so I don't really worry about the strength. With a light spine tap, light spine pressure, you'll be just fine. There's your lockup percentage right here, which I sometimes forget to show. We have no lock stick, absolutely no detent lash whatsoever. Very smooth and consistent here. This will only get better. Really nice click at the bottom and perfect centering with no detent lash. This knife comes in at $205, and honestly, Migron and AMEight have always done a good job with it. I've noticed that that Migron prices have slightly crept up, but with that, they've given us some extra things. In this case, we have inlays on both sides. Really nicely done inlays. Contoured and textured titanium as per usual. We have newly sculpted clips for some of these newer models, right? The backspacer is still full tie. We have a compound, decently heat-treated M390 blade. I wish the finish was something different, but you know what? Not bad. Really, $205, that's pretty competitive. I can't complain. It's subtly different than like 15 other designs that they have, but this is going to be exactly right for some people. And Micron's doing a good job of just slightly altering classic knife profiles and giving us premium materials. And they do make a lot of perfect knives for certain people, right? For some people, it's like, oh, I'd take that, but change the opening hole to a flipper tab or change the flipper tab to a front flipper. They pretty much do that. If it's not this, you can almost guarantee, if you're looking at this, you're like, oh, it's so close, it's almost perfect, and I got the money right. Go look at their knives, because it's almost a dead certainty they'll have exactly this with one or two alterations that will be exactly right for you. And in that way, Micron and AMEight make a lot of sense to me, right? A lot of people looking at their stuff, it's just like, they're just making the same thing over and over again. They're just shaving down lines and altering things. And that, for some people, they're not really into that. But for other people, it allows them to get essentially an ideal pocket knife, right? An ideal premium pocket knife. And they really do offer quite a bit for the money that you're spending. Very competitive in this territory. So this, generally speaking, is a recommendable knife, but it is nothing like outstanding, ultra spectacular, super unique, the most amazing thing I've ever seen. It's just a good combination of materials and design elements, right, that works. And Micron kind of has their formula down. So in that sense, recommendable. That's going to be pretty much it today, guys. Please make sure, like I said, linked right down below if you want to check this out. Please make sure to follow me on Instagram at metal_complex. If you enjoyed this video, leave a like. If you'd like to check out my other content, I do, of course, have lots of videos of knives that are either expensive or inexpensive that I do or don't like, so check those out. And if you enjoy all my content, go ahead and click on that Metal Complex logo right there and subscribe, because there's definitely more coming. Thanks again for watching, everybody, and have a great day.